And as I was walking out, Dennis Hopper, I remember him just sitting there like, oh, shit, who's this kid? Right. And as I was walking out, I lifted my head and go, hey, good to meet you. And I walked out, and he was like, what the
Want to watch the World Series?
Hey folks, Brian Lally, Hollywood native here, and you're about to watch another. It's like we're at a Steve Miller concert. You guys are just shouting it out. I'm sitting here as usual with my partner in crime, the man who made it all happen, Scott Williams. Scott, how are you today?
I am great, Brian. How are you?
I'm fantastic, never been better. Who do we have on today's show?
Today, Brian, we have a great guest, Rick Tejas.
Rick Tejas, yeah. Rick Tejas is a hell of a guy, man. He's got a great story that you're going to want to hear. Rick Tejas was born in Oakland, California, made it down to UCLA, decided to become an actor. At 17, he went to the set of General Hospital, started his first day with Rick Springfield on Rick Springfield's first day. Rick then made it to Lambda in England, studied acting there, came back, was an actor, became a producer, writer, director. And what he's got going on right now is A Million Miles Away, starring Michael Peña. Now, that is based on the book From Farmer to Astronaut by José Hernández. And Rick will tell the story of how he found the book, acquired the rights, and after going to one studio, they went to another studio, and the movie got made. It's coming out on Amazon Prime. It's a great story and a great movie. And there's a whole lot to tell in between there, and Rick's going to tell it to you.
What's up?
What's up, man? I got to leave this on. Sorry, guys. I travel next week, so
There you go.
going to Mexico.
Nice.
Don't want to test positive.
Yeah. So were you born in Danville?
No, I was born in Oakland.
Oh, okay.
Oakland, California.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1962.
Yeah. Oh, shit.
Raised in Hayward.
Okay.
Home to The Rock.
Oh, yeah?
Rock grew up in Hayward. And I just found out that Mahershala went to Mount Eden High School, which is right down the street from my house.
That's funny,
So,
man.
Yeah.
Hayward's kind of becoming famous now.
Yeah, I guess. Those are a couple of stars.
Yep.
So you're keeping up. You're leading the way.
Oh, well.
You're leading the way.
I don't know about that, but I'm trying to follow.
When did you know you wanted to act? Was that your first love, acting? I know.
Yeah, it was. When I was in high school, it's funny, I had these two girls that used to leave messages in my locker.
Yeah. Not in your inbox.
No, I didn't have an inbox at that time. And it said, you should be on TV. And I was like, okay. I never really thought about it. And they said that their teacher's mom worked for General Hospital. And they knew that I was going to UCLA. I had been accepted, and I was going down to Los Angeles to go to school at UCLA. And so I agreed to talk to the teacher. So I talked to the teacher, and he said, well, when you get down to LA, call my mom. And I'm like, okay. So I got down to LA, and I called this woman up, and she took my call because, obviously her son said something. And she's like, well, it's not a good time right now. Call back in a week or so. So I'm like, all right, fine, whatever. And I forgot all about it. And I'm at UCLA doing my thing.
And what were you studying in UCLA?
Well, I was a freshman, so I was, I didn't have a major. I started UCLA, and I rushed a fraternity. So
Southern Cal women.
Right. So I was busy. I wasn't thinking about school.
Did they have Dillons in Westwood at that time? The disco?
Yeah, I think so.
That was a big fucking deal, man.
Yep.
Run by the mob, I hear. A lot of cocaine going through Dillons in Westwood.
So eventually I called her, and she said, let me put you through to Skitch Henderson, I think his name was, the casting director.
Right.
And so he says, well, why don't you come in and we'll talk. So I went in. And at that time, I went to these offices. And so, we go in, we talk, and he's like, all right.
Was it on Prospect at the time?
Yeah, and it was on Gower, of Gower, somewhere on Gower Studios. Long story, to make it even longer. He's like, well, I don't know, maybe you can be an intern, or something, like on, extra work. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I go home, and by the time I get home, my fraternity brother's yelling outside the window, Tejas, the guy from ABC's on the phone. I'm like, what? And I walk in, and he goes, somebody called in sick on Monday. Can you be here on Monday? And I'm like, yeah. Bring a suit in, he didn't say Scrubs, but something else. I can't remember what it was. I'm like, okay, great. So now, Monday I show up and I pull up to Sunset Gower Studios.
Right.
Now, I've never been around television. I don't, the box was, I don't know what I was thinking, but I show up. And I go through these gates, and I'm like, this is kind of cool, like stages and stuff like that. And then I go downstairs, and they tell me to go to the stages, and and I go down, and I'm like, kind of like in this, where there's like, fake walls, and there's like a hospital, and people running around, and I walk up to the director, and he's doing a thing, and he's like, okay, go to the green room. And so I'm looking for a green room. I'm like, where's the green room? And the guy's like, no, it's not a green room. That's the room right there. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I go,
knew?
Yeah, exactly. He said, go to a green room. I'm like, I'm fucking looking for a green room. So then I go and I put my clothes down and I go to the green room, and there's all these people sitting around, and they're eating and they're talking, and I'm just kind of, and there's this good-looking dude. He's a young guy sitting there. I don't know who he is, and I don't know anybody in this room. And it's now 2:00, and we're eating. It's lunchtime, and they watch General Hospital. Now you got to remember, at the time, General Hospital was Luke and Laura, the biggest thing in the country.
I know.
I mean, every freaking fraternity, you would just walk at 2:00, and you could hear the TV sets going of Luke and Laura.
Right.
So. Is that more important?
Wow.
G-Money?
I guess so.
What's up, brother?
I'm on the podcast right now. You're on the podcast. You'll be sitting in the guest seat soon. But I like to answer the phone. Rick was right in the middle of telling a hell of a story. And I was like, G-Money's on the phone.
We got to pick that up.
We got to pick it up. So, what's up, man?
Hey, man, I'm just in town. Until Monday, so let me get together at some point if you're around.
You coming out here to the podcast?
I could. What are you doing that?
Yeah, anytime you're available. All right, I'm going to get back to this, and I'm going to call you later. I'm glad I picked up. All right, man. Love you, too. All right.
Love you, brother.
Graham Elwood, everybody. Graham Elwood. All right. All right. So.
Where the fuck was I? Lunch.
Everybody was eating.
Lunch.
Luke and Laura.
Right.
All the fraternities were.
Great. So this was a huge deal. Now, I never watched soap, so I have no clue who these people are. So now the TV set's going. The credits start rolling, and it's slowly dawning on me that everybody in this room is on that TV show. And I'm like, that's her. That's him. Like, holy shit, these are real people.
Right.
Now, I didn't realize that actors were like real people. I thought it was like, I don't know what I thought. I thought it was a box and they were fake people. They weren't real. They weren't like alive. And I'm like, holy shit. I'm in the middle of the biggest show of daytime soaps. And that guy who I walked up to and asked, hey, you want to play chess? And he was like, no. I'm like, okay. Didn't want to upset him. Was Rick Springfield. And it's his it was his first day. Dr. Drake something, Dr. Rick Drake, whatever his name was. And he and I end up in an elevator together, and he comes out for his first scene on the show, and I'm the orderly behind him.
Right.
Well, shit, I caught the bug, man. That was it. After that, I came back to UCLA, and I was fired up, and I was like, I got to find a theater department. And so luckily at the time, my brother had a fraternity brother up at Berkeley whose best friend went to school at UCLA, and he was in the theater department. The guy whose name is Jeff Rivas. And so Jeff and I became quick buddies, and he just kind of helped me kind of shepherd along. And that's how I kind of got started, is that way. It was awesome. Because it was just too much fun.
Dude.
And, once you start there, you're like, you keep trying to get the high of being on the set. So,
what year did Jesse's Girl come out?
So that day, okay, he walks out of the elevator. Yeah. It goes, I figure out his name is Rick Springfield. I get in my car. I'm driving down Sunset Boulevard to go home, back to UCLA. And all of a sudden on the radio, it was like, we got this new thing, Rick Springfield. Jesse's Girl. And all of a sudden started singing. I'm like, wait a minute, that's the guy I was just in the elevator with. And I just It never dawned on me who this guy was until then.
That's incredible, man.
So that's how I
Fucking
started.
Teenager.
I was 17 years old.
Yeah. Rick Springfield had done everything for you.
That's right.
That's crazy.
So
man.
that's how I got the bug. And so then and at the time, when I was in line to eat, I asked one of the actors, I'm like, hey, how do I do this for a living? And he said, go study the theater.
Yeah.
And I was like, the theater? He's like, yes, go study. And I was like, okay. So I went back to UCLA. I went straight to the drama department and started signing up for everything that I could sign up for.
That's fucking wild.
That's how I got involved, man.
That's awesome.
So you and James,
here I am.
You and James Dean.
Right?
You skipped the Santa Monica College part, but
Right,
you're at the
right.
UCLA drama department.
That's
yeah,
right.
Man.
Yep. I went to school with Shane Black, who wrote
Sure. Lethal Weapon. Yeah, man.
Shane and Jeff Rivas were roommates. I went to school with Tim Robbins.
Oh, wow.
We went to school with Grant Show, who was an actor.
Yeah, Melrose Place.
Melrose Place.
Yeah.
Went to school with Daphne Zuniga, who was in my shop class.
Right.
As young actors. And who else? There's a bunch. Aronson, a bunch of actors and I remember after Tim graduated school, they started this little theater group called Our Gang.
The Actors Gang.
The Actors Gang. Yeah, the Actors Gang. I remember seeing them in a theater downtown LA.
Yeah,
it was kind of like this. And you just walked over drunks to get in, and it was tiny.
So my buddy Jim Terry, who's good buddies with Scott here, what's his name down there, Chris, does the props? Yeah, Scott doesn't talk a lot. We're trying to involve him. Isn't that right? Yeah, it is. He's off camera. I'm like, Scott? Yeah. Chris Bell. No, but my buddy Jim was one of the originators of the Actors Gang downtown at Al's Bar.
Yep.
That's crazy, man. I didn't know.
Jeff Foster and a bunch of guys. Some of them working on like Pirates of the Caribbean. Big guys.
Yeah. Wild. Rick with a mustache. We had no idea.
Yeah, this is what I look like.
That's nice.
Wow, that's crazy, man. But the crazy thing to me is, as hard as it is to make it in this business, you just mentioned a few people that worked. Some of them were obviously Tim Robbins, star, director.
But at that time, they weren't.
No,
at that
but
time,
I'm saying so many of them
All
got
of
to
us.
that level. Usually someone's coming from somewhere, and you're like, yeah, I had a couple people here, you know what I mean? But you mentioned like half a dozen actors that became known or more, 6 or 7. It just wild, the percentage that just came out of what you said. I'm like, well, all those people ended up working.
A lot of them. I mean, there was a play that I was in at UCLA that the girl, I can't even remember the actress's name, but she was the lead in the play, and she's Mad About You. Yeah. She played his sister, I think it was, or whatever, but she works all the time. A lot of people came out of UCLA in the 80s, early 80s.
My buddy Jim Terry went down to Al's Bar and he said, I want to do theater here. And the guy owner was like, hey, we're a hardcore rock bar. And he goes, why I want to do theater here. And the guy goes, yeah, well, no. And he goes, we'll do it Sunday afternoon. The guy was like, okay. That's how it got started. That's how, the beginning of the Actors Gang and out theater at Al's Bar. Al's Bar was a wild fucking punk rock club, and that was a dangerous place. You went down there at night?
Yeah, no, it was scary.
Yeah.
You literally crawled over people to get in to see Tim Robbins play Oberon in one of the plays that he was doing. I remember jumping over these, guys passed out and sitting in chairs like that, these airport, old movie theater chairs. And watch this little tiny plate, a black box.
When you went to Al's Bar, you hope to get a parking space near the door.
Close enough.
Yeah,
so you didn't have to walk too far.
That is the hippest part of downtown now. You know what I mean? Hewitt Street down there is fucking...
In the 80s, you didn't go down there.
Hang out down there. You went to see a show, or you went to see a punk rock show. I saw some shows down there. It was fucking nuts, man. But the good thing was, that's back when I was drinking, so I was drunk all the time walking in there. You weren't as worried as you were. Care. But no, that's just wild, man. It's a hipster place. That's crazy, man, that you were down there at that time. That's wild, man.
Are you working on set throughout UCLA, or are you doing odd jobs as well?
No, because I was lucky enough that during the summers, my dad and my grandfather were both Teamsters in the Teamsters Union. So they, at that time in Oakland, they had to let their kids in the union was basically closed. They wouldn't bring in new members. But if you were a legacy, they would let you get your card. And so my brother and I both got our cards. And so for the summer, we would come and work at Lucky's Market in the refrigerating department. And that's a whole other story that I can get into if you want. But we ended up working for the summer there and then being able to go to school full time. Nice. So that was lucky that we had that job. I'm very, very grateful to John because, long story short, my brother got hired not knowing from a man who knew me and my little sister because we went to school with his kids and my brother was older. He didn't know this. And then when they found out, John immediately took a liking to my brother and gave him a job and said, you come and you work whenever you want and da-da-da-da-da. Mm-hmm. They used to call us CK, college kids.
Right.
Hey, CK, what's up?
Did your brother have a career there or what did your brother end up?
No. He was working to go to Berkeley.
Oh, okay.
He was working summer jobs and then he graduated Berkeley and then went to Hastings Law School. So he put himself through law school. Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah.
Well, my brother lives in Orinda.
My brother lives in Alamo.
And my brother went to Hastings.
Well, they probably know each other.
How old's your brother?
63.
My brother's a little older, but that's crazy. Your brother ever play rugby?
No.
Okay.
Basketball.
Hastings football. Hastings Rugby Football Club. My brother went to Dartmouth, and then he went to Hastings.
My brother was recruited at Dartmouth, played basketball.
That's insane.
Ended up going to Santa Clara and playing with Rambus.
Kurt Rambus?
With Rambus.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Wandale Theus.
I had no idea. Hastings School, because my brother's right there. My brother's been there since 84.
Yeah, same.
So.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I lived in the city.
Mahershala went to St. Mary's right there in Orinda.
Oh, okay.
Right there.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Crazy. So, did you go back to General Hospital ever? Or?
No, that was the only time.
That
was the only time. I went back years later as I was already on Loving as an actor. And so Jeff, I can't remember the casting director's name, Hirschfield?
Mark Teschner?
Mark Teschner.
Oh, okay.
So Mark brought me in for
I just auditioned for him for, on tape.
Right.
We're in COVID time.
Right.
But a friend of mine who was recurring on there, she coached me, Holly Gagne. She was recently on when Luke and Laura came back. What was it, 5 years ago?
Yep.
She was one of the ones that kidnapped their kid or something. That, anyway, but yeah, so I coached her on that, and she coached me on this latest thing. Wow. So well,
one of the actresses on there now, Laura Wright, who's one of the main girls on that show, I think right now. Her and Carlos, I think, are a couple or something. Yeah. Laura was this young girl that came on our show, and she was pumping gas, and our casting director saw her and brought her on, and she's been on a soap since that time, since 1991. I mean, she's been on a long time.
So you started studying. Did you do
UCLA? What ended up happening is, if you're not a theater major, you can only do so much, and I wasn't prepared to go in 100%.
Right.
I was like, this is too much money, and I had to figure out what major, and I figured my brother's major would be easy, so I did economics. So I got my econ degree.
Oh my God, economics?
So, because I was good at math. I love math, and I was like, I did accounting and management and all that stuff, and so I was an econ major. And so I got my
took an econ class at Santa Monica College, and I dropped out of it. If I was in there another 5 minutes, I would have shoved my fist down my throat till I stopped breathing.
Man, Brian, you know what I love doing?
Yeah.
I love tapping that subscribe button.
I love it too, son. And just like all your dates, I tap it last. But nothing's as good as tapping this button.
You see Brian here? He's not always doing the best. Financially, mentally, physically, for sure. You want to help keep Brian off the streets of Hollywood? There's a way you can help. Join us on Patreon. You want to tell them what we got on there, buddy?
Yes, we have the general admission, we have the backstage, and we have the VIP all-access pass. So please, join today. I'm due for a bath.
In the arms of the angel,
that was my experience with economics. Obviously, it worked out for you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I got to say, it helps me in my producing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I tell people about this all the time. I said, if you're going to be in this business, the first thing you have to learn is to manage your money.
Yeah.
Manage your money, man, because if you don't take care of the money ain't going to take care of you.
Yeah.
So
you did as much as you could. You never switched over.
Nope.
You got your degree?
I got my degree in econ. I graduated in 84. I didn't know what to do, where to start. And so I started looking for classes. Started looking for acting coaches, and I found this little school on La Brea and Melrose called Estelle Harmon Actors Workshop.
Oh, sure.
And so
Sure.
I went in, auditioned. She put me in the beginner class, and I quickly went from that class to the professional class, which was probably not a good move because
Yeah.
I was young and
Yeah.
very scared, and all of a sudden I went from being the best in the class to like, holy shit, these people are working. You know.
Well, I've seen that because they ask you to do things that you're not prepared for.
Yeah,
just
it's just too much. It's
Right.
like almost, you know, you learn how to play the piano, and then it's like, okay, go start studying with Chopin, and you're like, fuck, man. I mean,
Right.
I'm barely doing my scales.
Right.
And the problem with being a quick learner is that you tend to jump too quickly to the next level, and
Right.
when you're not ready.
Right.
And it really hampered me.
Yeah.
Because I was really scared. I mean,
Yeah.
I was not, and so, you know, I always said to myself, I wish I would have gotten more training. I would have gotten more
Sure.
training. And I eventually, because this was like in 1985, and then in 86 is when I met Benita, my wife.
Oh, shit. I didn't know that.
Is the next year later.
Oh, okay.
And that changed my life and the trajectory because her older sister had gone to RADA.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was this young Latina actress in Albuquerque, and Benita's mom started a theater company.
In
She grew up
Albuquerque?
in Albuquerque,
Oh, cool.
and her mom was like businesswoman of the year for the governor, and she was a doer, man. I love that woman. And she started this theater company, and so her family grew up in the theater.
That's so
One
cool.
of the people that she recruited was a graduate of RADA,
Right.
and so he would push the young actors, and my wife and her brother, who's an actor now, Benito,
Yeah.
and my producing partner, and so she ended up at 18 going to RADA and graduating and coming back, and then being cast as the lead in Three Amigos.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
We had Pamela Dillman on here before. Pamela Dillman is a graduate of RADA.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So we ended up going to Lambda. Benita,
Right.
me, and Benito. All
I
three
didn't
of
know
us.
you went to fucking Lambda.
So I ended up going to Lambda.
Oh, my God. Wow.
Yeah, so after I met Benita, they had just finished the movie. It hadn't come out yet. I met her at a function I didn't really want to go to. My buddy, Jeff, calls me and is like, hey, come down here. There's casting directors. And I'm like, dude, I don't want to care, man. He's like, no, just come on. And then I walk in and I meet Benita and Patrice. And I was like, whoa, who are these two?
Right.
And they were the star of this movie. And, you know, and so Patrice was the one who kept saying, you should really think about going to London. And I was
Right.
like, there's no way I'm going to get in. Come on. She goes, I'll help you. And so she worked on my audition piece with me.
Right.
And so we worked through one classical drama
Sure.
and one like restoration comedy.
Right.
And so I got in.
Wow.
And so I ended up going for a year. And
You had to go over there
Yeah.
to audition?
no, they hold auditions in New York and in LA.
Okay.
And so I auditioned for it. And at that time, I was going out for some auditions. And one of the first things that I got cast in was a movie called Colors with Sean Penn and Robert Duvall.
Colors.
And- That's right. And Dennis Hopper was the director. Now, I'm a
nightmare
Mexican
walking
college
psychopath
graduate. Yeah. I'm a Mexican, you know, American, don't speak Spanish. I didn't even know I was Mexican until I moved to LA. To be honest with you. I didn't really know I was Mexican until I moved to LA. And then, because I grew up with a bunch of white guys in my high school and went to Catholic high school and it never even came up until I came to LA. And then they went, oh, you're Mexican. You only go out for these roles. And I was like, they're so against who I was. I was a, you know, regular kid, and all of a sudden I'm being asked to play gangbangers, and I was like, shit, how do you do that? So I ended up going to the penal system.
Right.
And I went to like a continuation school, but they were all locked up kids.
Right.
And they let me go in for this audition. I needed to find a character.
Right.
And so they let me go in.
What you call it, hall? I'm trying to think of the...
It's like the Youth Authority.
Right.
The California Youth CYA, California Youth Authority.
Oh, okay.
I remember walking in there and the guy's like, okay, you have to sign this paper that if they take you hostage, there's no hostage negotiations. So you kind of go at your own risk. And I'm like, I'll be fine. So I go in there and I sign and I walk into this classroom and they're all white T-shirts and khaki pants. Orale, what's up, see? And I'm sitting there and I'm like, hi guys, what's going on? You know? And they're like, why are they gonna cast you, man? What? They should cast me. I'm a movie star, you say? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know, man. And so I ended up going back because I went in for the audition and he's like, it's not right. Go do your homework and come back. And then I did this and I came back and then I got the part. But actually that's not Colors. It's a different movie. Because what ended up happening is with the Colors, I walked in totally choloed out.
Right.
Hairnet,
Yeah.
the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I was pissed because I was late. And I walk in and I just used it. I was fucking pissed off. And I'm like, motherfuckers, what the... And as I was walking out, Dennis Hopper, I remember him just sitting there like, oh shit, who's this kid?
Right.
And as I was walking out, I lifted my head and I go, hey, good to meet you. And I walk out and he was like, what the fuck? And then so he hired me.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he hired me. That was my get on the...
Did you work with Penn or Duvall or?
Yeah, I was behind Sean Penn when he smacked that guy. Remember when it was on the boardwalk in Venice Beach?
Yeah.
And me and Robert Duvall and Dennis Hopper were sitting in our little thing watching the monitor.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden there's this commotion happening. I look up and Sean's hitting this extra because he's taking his picture. And I was like, oh shit. And then there's a commotion behind us, and I'm like, what's going on here? And there's these two girls, Latin girls, are fighting. And then I come to find out that they were using real gang members in this movie, and they took the wrong gang into Venice Beach.
Oh,
they didn't use the Venice Beach gang.
They didn't use Ghost Town or
No,
B13?
they used somebody else. So now these two girlfriends are fighting, and now the boys are coming after us, and now... So Dennis looks to me and he goes, all right, Rick, go jump in the van. We're going to go do your scene down around the corner. So get in there with your boys. So a bunch of us go walk to this van. We get in and these guys are freaked out. And I'm like, what's the matter? They go, dude, you almost got stabbed. I'm like, what? And he goes, you didn't see that guy standing right behind you? And I'm like, no. And he's like, he almost stabbed you. That's why we jumped in. And I was like, oh my God. So we get to the parking lot. I get out. I tell Dennis, shit's happening, man. I don't know if you're aware, but that car over there, they were like, we shot our scene. I got in, took my shit off. I ran, put my college clothes back on, got back in my Nissan Datsun or whatever, and drove away. I'm like, I'm out of here.
You know, we did Mi Familia in Boyle Heights under the 4th Street Bridge, man. And it was one Friday night where that shit almost jumped off. And
they don't care if you're making a movie, man. Well, it's like you're in my neighborhood.
But they hired the OGs from White Fence as security, which meant the young guys were supposed to respect them and not fuck up the shoot. But it was one hot Friday night, man, and the shit was about to go down. And I heard something that I heard growing up where I used to get fucking jumped. A chick would walk up to you and she'd be like,
why are you looking at me? Or...
No. She wouldn't say nothing. She'd walk up to you right in front of you. She'd turn around and say, he said he don't like Mexicans. So the dudes get up and they walk over and they go, Ole, Holmes, you don't like Mexicans? If you say...
I didn't say that. You say she's a liar?
Yeah.
Oh, she's lying now,
She's like, you calling my girl a liar, Holmes?
Right.
I'm like, no. So you did say it. No, I didn't say it. Well, what the fuck? You know what I mean?
Right.
So we're there. It's hot in the neighborhoods, heated up, fucking mentally. The temperature's going up. And all of a sudden, this girl screams, what's wrong? You say you don't like Mexicans?
Oh, man.
And I was like, I got PTSD. I'm thinking, I'm about to get it from somebody, man. And we went to lunch. it was all night shoot, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Yep.
We went to lunch in his backyard. You know how it is. They rent people's properties, which is really good for the neighborhood.
Yeah, they make some money.
Right. We rent and we come out. Silence. Everybody's gone. So I guess the OGs did their part.
They did it.
You know what I mean? Because they paid them good money to stand around. And I talked to a couple of those guys. Anyway, that shit is fucking crazy when it starts going like that, when you're shooting in those neighborhoods. Because Venice was fucking crazy back then, man. Venice was not, they were not putting up condos back then.
No.
They had, the projects in Venice, you know this, the ones east of Lincoln are now $2,000 a month, $2,500 a month, one bedroom apartments. And that was the fucking dope spot.
Sure.
You know what I mean? That's crazy. Anyway, that's nuts, man.
Yeah. Well, I did that movie and I did Fatal Beauty with Whoopi Goldberg.
Okay.
And the reason I bring that up is because after we did those two movies, the parts were both gangbangers. And I was like, I got to go get an education because this is not what I want to be doing for the rest of my life. And so that's when I auditioned and we got into Lambda. And at the time, people were like, but you're working. Why are you leaving? And I said, because I know me. If I try to do this in LA and I get a job, I'm going to go do the job. I'm not going to get trained. Right. And so I left. We threw a party because we didn't have any money. How are we going to pay this Lambda? And Whoopi Goldberg wrote us a check for a couple $100 to, donate for Benita and R to go to school.
That's insane, man. Yeah. Lambda. So what was it like being in London?
Well, what I didn't realize is that a lot of these people were theater actors and theater graduates of their colleges, and this was post for them, and I was intimidated because, I remember, I'll find it later, reading Hamlet. We were all sitting around reading Hamlet, and we do the first act. The teacher gets up and goes, "Oh, isn't that brilliant?" And I was like, I have no fucking idea what we just read. And these people are talking as if they understood exactly what they were reading. Right. And I had no clue. And I was like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? So I stuck it out. And when I got back to LA, I don't know how I got into this audition, but I got this audition that changed the trajectory of my life. And I walk in and I meet this woman named Mary Alice Bunham and John Murray. And they're two producers that just gotten together and they were doing this show, kind of like an improv kind of thing where you tell the actors kind of what the story arc is, but you kind of find it yourself and you get from A to B. I didn't get that part. The show didn't go, but then they ended up casting me in this other kind of soapy kind of show that they did. I walked in and she's like, "Where have you been?" And because this is final callbacks, and I said, "Well, I just got back from London." And they're like, "Wow, we've been looking for someone like you." So they cast me, and the show, I was on the front page of the LA Times. There's a big old picture of me and this girl, and I'm like, fuck, this is great. This is gonna, change it. And the show didn't get picked up. And we're like, oh man. And then, months go by and I meet our boys and I'm playing baseball and softball. And then I get a call from Mary Alice and she says, "Hey, Rick, I'm in New York now. I had to take this job. I'm now the executive producer of Loving on ABC.
Jesus, man.
Would you like to be on a soap?" And I was like, "Let me check my schedule." Yes. Because I was waiting tables. I was working at the Velvet Turtle. I was working at the Red Lobster and, waiting on Muhammad Ali, waiting on Tommy Chong. And I was like, man, I want to get in this business so bad, And so...
Was the Velvet Turtle on Third?
The Velvet Turtle was right off of Sepulveda and Olympic.
It came up on Facebook yesterday, the Velvet
Turtle. The Velvet Turtle.
So
really?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Jeff Rivas, my buddy Jeff, was working there and got me a waiting job there.
Right.
She goes, "I got to put you through these auditions." So we show up and everybody that I've seen and all the auditions are all there. And, they're all working. And I'm like, shit, here we go again. And I'm the only one that's flown to New York for a screen test. And that's where I did my screen test. I'm sitting there, looking at Central Park and going, well, how the fuck did I get here, man? And so then I get signed to a 3-year contract.
You've been watching Brian Lally, Hollywood Native. Now I want to talk to you about something I'm really passionate about, and that's teaching acting. So I co-founded Lola's Acting School with my son, Kyle Lally, Lally Acting School. I've been acting for a long time now. I have 100-plus credits on IMDb, hundreds of plays I've been involved with over the years, and I just want to share that experience with you.
What we do differently here at Lola's is we give you practical advice that you can use on a movie set, on a play, an audition, anywhere. We give you the foundation to build yourself as a great actor.
If you come to us, you don't know anything, we can teach you everything you need to know to be comfortable on a set and to excel. Don't just listen to me. Look at what our students are doing. Daryl Wesley, who is writing on 2 hit shows, The Game and The Upshaws, and Ben Barrett, who is a series regular on The Politician, Megan Davis, who is playing Amber Heard in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard story. Come check us out. We're at the Historic Arc Theater in the NoHo Arts District. You ever want to try plant-based eating?
I have.
What, you're a little confused, overwhelmed? You don't know how to get started?
Definitely.
Well, there's a simple answer to that. Go to Debbie Chew's Chew On Vegan YouTube channel. Debbie Chew is a plant-based RN. I've known Debbie for over 38 years, and she's very good at what she does. You go to the channel, and there's over 300 recipes. They're simple, easy to make, and they're delicious. If you want to try it, you just might get healthy. Give it a shot. Chew On Vegan. Wow.
Nice.
And then I moved to New York.
Right.
Benita, stays in LA. I moved to New York. And that's when my soap opera stuff started.
Are you married at this point?
No, we're boyfriend and girlfriend. We ended up breaking up for 10 years.
Oh, wow. Shit.
And then we got back together in 2000. So we've been back together 22 years. But total, we've known each other since 1985.
Wow.
So we were together for like 5 years and then broke up and then got back together.
Nice.
So were you on the full 3 years?
No. So what happened was, this was in February of 1990. So then like around September, Mary Ellis calls me and says, and at this time I'm bugging her to get into the control room because I want to be a director. So I'm like, hey, how do I shadow the directors? And she's like, well, I don't even know if I knew what the word shadow meant.
Yeah, right.
So how do I follow the directors? Yeah. And she's like, well, I don't know, because they kind of chime a little negatively about the actors sometimes in the studio. They don't want actors to hear. So I was like, she goes, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. But I never got to do that because she called me in September and said, I'm going back to LA. And I was like, what happened? And she goes, well, John and I sold the show to MTV. And now John is a news producer. Mary Ellis was a soap opera producer. She started doing soaps, answering the telephone at the front desk at 19 and ended up being the executive producer by the time she was 26. She was the boss. And so you put those 2 things together, news cameras and soap operas. What do you get? Reality shows.
Right.
So she said, we sold the show to MTV, and I go, well, what is it? And she goes, well, we're going to take these kids and we're going to put them in a house and we're going to follow them around with cameras. And I was like, sounds interesting. I don't know if it's going to work, but okay. Well, so she leaves. Jackie Babbitt comes in, and I'm on for another 6 months. And then she says, you know what? Rena's not renewing her contract. She's going to go do some movies. So we're going to let your character go. But they had to pay me for the next 6 months. Right. So I was still on payroll for 6 months. And so I just enjoyed New York for another year. And then I moved back to LA, and then I ended up working for Mary Ellis I caught a call to be in production. And so then that's when I veered to the left and started working in production.
Right. But you did some other TV shows, 1-hour dramas or sitcoms?
Yeah, I mean, a bunch of guest stuff in that year,
Right.
And in New York, I did a off-Broadway show, what was it called? Lake Street Extension.
And what theater was in it?
The Signature Theater Company.
Okay.
That's when Albert Albee, is that what his name is? Edward Albee?
Edward Albee, yeah, the Zoo
what's his
Story.
name was doing the play?
Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
Norton,
Oh.
what's his name?
Ed Norton?
Ed Norton, the actor. He was a young actor doing that show when we were doing ours as well. His show followed ours. And then I also in New York auditioned for this theater company that ended up becoming John Ortiz and Seymour Hoffman's company.
Oh, shit.
Before Seymour Hoffman got involved, it was all Latino actors.
Right.
And they auditioned to everybody, and I was asked to join, and I was only in it for like a few months with, you know, Giancarlo Esposito and all these guys. I mean,
he's
these guys.
He's the most underrated actor in
dude,
Hollywood.
these were like big time dudes,
yeah,
you know.
He's the most non-talked about, to me, great actor in Hollywood,
Sure.
Giancarlo.
Yeah,
Esposito.
no, but him and Paul Calderon and John Ortiz, talk about being intimidated.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, oh my God, these people are so freaking good. And we would do theater games, you know, and you just get up and go.
Right.
And you're like, you're with the best of the best. And after I left, I guess John was friends with Hoffman, and so they ended up bringing him in, and then they got partners with the public and started, and it got much bigger.
Right.
But by that time, I was gone already. I moved to LA.
Right.
So you go back to LA and it's your first go as a producer?
Yeah, well, what happened was a guy named Matt Kunitz, who's an EP and does like Wipeout, is one of his big shows. He was Mary Ellis's assistant for a long time, and they ended up giving him a show to produce, and I was his production coordinator. Okay. And that's how I got in to the company. And then once you get in, we joke because Murray was like, you know, reality film school.
Right.
You just that's how you learn. They just moved you around.
Right.
You know, once they liked you, you're just like, well, why don't you go work in post? Why don't you go work in the writing department?
Right.
Why don't you go work over here? So I worked all the jobs. And
so I want to get back to exactly where you're at now, but I just wanted to talk about New York being a theater town and your experience, my experience doing off-Broadway and walking around Soho or Chelsea and stuff, and people recognizing you, you know, sitting out having lunch on the sidewalk and going, hey, man, I like the show. It was just a great vibe as a theater town to me. Did you experience any of that?
Sure, yeah. It's funny because I would be recognized by elevator operators everywhere I went, man, because they all watched soap operas.
Right.
So they all knew that I'd walk by and all of a sudden I'd hear, hey, Rio. And I'd look, they're like, hi, what's up? So it was, it's fun. It's a great town. It's the hard, you know, it's a hard town.
Right.
You know.
Right.
But it was fun.
So you got into production, you're moving from gig to gig.
And I'm still acting. I'm still sort of doing some stuff. I'm still kind of, you know, Mary Ellis would let me go on auditions, but eventually it got to the point where you needed to make a decision. Do you still want to, like, because now I wanted to direct. She made me go into the writing department, write a whole season before they let me direct a season. I was more in charge of the creative development of a show, you know, because they'd say, what are we going to do and where are we going? And then I would make the idea of kind of what we're going to do that season, and then they would, you know, refine it, and then we'd go to MTV and say, okay, this is what we want to do. And I'm like, okay, go shoot it. I did that for 8 years. Right. Traveled around the world. I mean, literally around the world. One season we started in Cuba and ended up in Seattle on a boat, on a ship.
Dang.
The ship the whole time?
Road Rules.
Road Rules.
Called Road
Oh,
Rules.
nice.
Yeah.
You were on the ship the whole time?
The whole time. What happened was the season before, what happened, I don't know, are you familiar with Road Rules and how it works?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
At the end of the season, if the kids do all of the challenges, they get these prizes. Well, one season they got semester at sea. And I'm like, what the hell is semester at sea? Well, it's exactly what it is. It's a semester at sea. If you're in college, instead of going to France and studying over there for a semester, you could get on a boat and travel around the world, and you go to classes, and it's a school but in a ship.
Right.
It's for rich kids. I didn't have $25,000 to put down on this. But they decided, well, instead of giving it as a prize, why don't you have the cast be part of the ship and be students? And so that season, they were part of the school. Right. And we filmed them as they went around the world. Right. It wasn't a great season in that, you know, content-wise, but for the crew, it was fantastic. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, it was great.
So my all-time favorite reality show, honest to God, is The Surreal Life.
Okay, well,
Now, you became a celebrity to me when I realized that was your show.
That was my show.
Yeah. So I just
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say, my partner and I met at Bunim-Murray, and we became a partnership, and we started coming up with ideas, and we ended up signing with UTA. They facilitated partnering us up with this guy named Mark Cronin, and we kind of just sat around and just threw a bunch of ideas, like, let's do this, And one of the commercials that was on at the time, I guess, was Florence Henderson making stovetop stuffing with Mr. T.
Right.
And we were like, well, what if that was real? What if, like, the next morning, what would they talk about?
Right.
And so we came up with this idea for this show, and we ended up selling it, called The Surreal Life. And we did 2 seasons on the WB, and it did really well, but the WB at that time, their audience was young, really young. And so people would come watch a show and then leave. And so it wasn't helping them. So they let it go, which at the time was like the worst news ever. But it was eventually ended up becoming the best thing ever, because we moved over to VH1. And VH1 at that time was nothing. It was just music, like stuff. I don't even know what it was, but it ended up becoming a massive hit.
Yeah. And filmed at one of my all-time favorite Los Angeles homes.
At the Glenn Campbell
estate. Right below
that tower.
Right below the tower, whatever the fuck that is. But they got a tower up there in this day and age.
I know.
Yeah. With the horse property. And I was remodeling a house up on the street right below it. And what was his name's wife? Nellie, Billy,
I don't remember.
She came out on the horses with the kids. And we're off of Mulholland Drive. These are $1 million houses. And this estate was, at that time, multi-million dollars.
Sure.
Probably worth $20 million nowadays.
Because there's a lot of land, too.
Yeah, huge piece of property. And all of a sudden, these gates come opening up, and they're coming out on the horses. We're like, what the fuck is this going on up here? But,
It's got that big old gate that opens up and goes down.
What are some of your stories out of that place? Because there was some kooks on that in a good way.
Well, what's interesting is the show took a weird turn in that it was mostly designed initially to be like a way to get to know somebody. Like, I know you from the press, and I know you from the press, but I don't know who you are.
Right.
I only know what I read about you.
Right.
And so what was interesting for me was how people came in with preconceived ideas of each other, and then you're nothing like what the press makes you out to be. And that to me was interesting.
Right.
And eventually, I think with reality is once people became professional reality people, they started to manufacture things or let things get overblown more than what normal, because you figured when you got mad, all those cameras just went,
right.
And you went, oh.
Yeah, they can mold that image how they want more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
But you gave Flavor Flav another career.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, we got a lot of people. I mean, at that time, I remember when we were selling it, I remember sitting at NBC and they say, "You'll never cast this," and we're like, "Well, just give us some money and we'll do it. We'll try." And and the WB, they ended up saying, "Okay, let's cast it and see what names you came up with."
Right.
What you come up with. And MC Hammer, my stepfather, used to work for the A's.
Okay.
And so MC Hammer knew my dad.
He was a bat boy.
He was the bat boy. At first, he was a dancer out in the parking lot.
And Charles Finley, the owner, called him Hammer because he looked like Hammer and Hank Aaron.
Yeah, that's right. And so when we made the call, I mentioned, Sam Spear, my stepfather, and he's like, "Oh, Sammy." So, tried to assure him that we're not here to exploit you. We're here to help you. And so that's kind of how it all kind of came together.
So Robbie Van Winkle,
Vanilla
Ice, was running away from the Vanilla Ice for years.
Sure.
And so on that show, he goes to a karaoke bar.
That's right.
Were you there on that?
Estrada. I actually wasn't there. At that time, I was having back surgery.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah, I've had 2 back surgeries in my life, and unfortunately, that was one of them.
Right. Okay. So he goes in that packed karaoke bar.
Yep.
Packed. And they're doing Ice Ice Baby.
Ice Ice Baby. He didn't want to do it.
And then he ends up taking the mic.
Because of who was it? Was it Eric Estrada or somebody talked him into like, "Hey, why are you running from yourself?"
Right.
Just
what he takes.
They love you for this.
People went nuts. people went nuts. And he started breaking free. And obviously, he's gone on tour, done a lot of shows. I saw him on Rachel Ray doing it. You know, my favorite show of his was...
the Restoration one?
The Amish show.
Yes.
Restoration, when he worked with the Amish.
Restore, yeah.
Dude, I thought that was a fucking... him with the Amish?
Sure.
I thought it was fucking great. But and obviously, he was a talented builder. He knew stuff and an artist. I think he did a lot of his own tattoo artwork and stuff. But yeah, it was good. You know, I just love people getting a second chance. I think all of America likes a comeback.
Sure.
And I didn't know why he was running away from it so hard. But I'm not him.
I mean, I can understand that, you know, you want to do something new, you want to do something different, but people love you for what you've done.
Right.
You know, and it just seems that the people who lean into it, you know, actually are freer.
Right.
Can be freer.
Yeah. And then Gary Coleman runs into Todd Bridges.
Right. at the play right there on Sunset. I was there for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it still Ben Frank's at the time, or was it Mel's Diner?
I think it was Mel's.
Was it?
Yeah, it was
because
Mel's.
that was originally Ben Frank's.
Yeah, it was Mel's.
I knew the people that sold that was the biggest mistake of their professional careers.
Right.
Yeah, Ben Frank's was the best.
Is that what it was called before? Or
Ben
was it
Frank's, yeah.
Ben Frank's?
For 50 years. I don't
Really?
know, a long time. Yeah, after I got cast in LA Confidential, I was in the bathroom. I come out and Curtis Hansen's in the bathroom, the director of LA Confidential. And I'm like, oh, hey, man, you know, thanks for the casting. And he goes, hey, man, you deserved it. So
That's cool.
I got a lot of work in that movie. Some of it got cut out. But I'm sitting there talking to him in the bathroom, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get the fuck out of here before...
This guy's going to try to fuck me.
Yeah, before this guy... fires me from the movie because I'm getting fucking weird.
Because you're creeping me out in the toilet. Can I go pee in peace, please?
Yeah. I mean, he was sitting on the toilet at the time.
Right.
No, he was just standing there washing his hand. I'm like, I'm getting out of the bathroom.
I remember sitting in the toilet at the Golden Eagle Awards or peeing in the toilet and look over and there's Norman Lear.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hi, Mr. Lear. And he's like, hello. I was like, I just love your work. He was like, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got a hell of a stream, Mr. Lear.
Yes, exactly. I was like, okay, it probably wasn't the best timing.
Yeah. Eric Estrada, man, I ran into that dude a few times. Yeah, my buddy, who's not an actor, did a movie with him years ago called Honey Boy. My buddy was shooting baskets, and he had early tattoos. You know, this is 40 years ago. He had some tattoos, and this guy comes up in the park. My buddy's shooting baskets with a cut-off sweatshirt, and he goes, hey, I'd like you to audition or be in this movie. And my buddy grew up in Hollywood. We grew up in Hollywood. He's like, get the fuck out of here. And he goes, no, I'm a director. He's like, get the fuck out of here. He was like 19, 20 years old, and he's like, this dude coming up to me, hey, I want you to be in a movie. And he's like, get the fuck out. He goes, no, here's my name. And back then, you had to call the Directors Guild.
Right.
My father was an actor, happened to know the guy's name. But he called the Directors Guild, and they gave us credits. And he goes, okay, so we go down to the...
Wow.
They're filming the movie.
They didn't have IMDb back then?
No.
For real.
We go down to the Olympic Auditorium.
Yep.
And Eric Estrada is this hustler from New York in this movie. And he's boxing. And so we go down there. There's a young Cassandra Peterson with her table, you know, selling Elvira stuff.
Sure.
Who knew who she was, 1981?
Yep.
Fucking beautiful. Anyway, so we go out in the parking lot, and he dribbles around with, I think it was Jocko, the drummer from Sha Na Na.
Oh, my God.
And so since Jocko was in the union, he was going to have the lines, and Dave was just going to play basketball. And Eric Estrada really couldn't play. Sorry, Eric, you were always good to me. So every time he took a shot, Dave was behind him, you know, making the shot. But anyway, Eric Estrada was a good dude.
Wow.
And he seemed like a good dude on the show, did he?
Yeah.
He didn't have any problems, right?
No.
Yeah.
No. It was just, you know, most everybody was, you know, it just got a little crazy like in seasons 5 and 6.
Yeah.
It just got a little nuts. Yeah.
Well,
What's your favorite experience, producing wise?
Probably with the thing that I'm working on right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you allowed to talk about it?
Yeah.
oh, we're going to get to that. We're
Yeah.
going to get to that.
The movie that we're producing, I think, to me, is the most impactful. And the reason why I think it's important, and if I have anything that I'm probably the most proud of in my career, it's this.
So I guess we're going to go now, which is fine. I know the story. I want you to tell the story about being in Danville and
Okay.
walking into
the library.
and deciding. Well, you tell the story.
Oh yeah. Well, what happened was I was up in Danville visiting with my family. My sister has 2 little boys that were just little, because they were. This was 5 years ago, so they're 6 and 8 now. So 1 and 3. And I wasn't working at the time, and I was just kind of languishing around, and I decided to go to the library. Just to go read, just go sit, read the newspaper and do whatever. And I look over and I see this book, and it's got this picture of this astronaut on it, and it's a Latin dude. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I pick it up and I look at it and I read the jacket, and I'm like, wow, this is an interesting story. Like, why isn't this a movie? It's crazy. So I read the book and I get really excited, and I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And so I call my brother-in-law, who's also my producing partner, and I said, Benito, read this book. And so he read it, and he's like, dude, this is a movie, man. And I said, I know. I said, I got to find this guy. And so my aunt lives in Stockton, which is where he's from, José Hernández. And so I called her and I said, how do I find this guy? And she goes, well, he's probably got, I think he's got like a consulting company or something here in Stockton. So I found it, and I found an email for the company, and I emailed him, and nothing came back. So like a month goes by, and I'm like, shit, and then so I re-email, and I said, me and my producing partner, Benito Martinez from The Shield, and da-da-da-da-da, and I get an email back. And he's like, hey, yeah, let's talk. And so I schedule a phone call between the 3 of us, and now he obviously knows who Benito is, loves The Shield, loves my brother-in-law played the captain for 8 years on The Shield with Mackie and all those guys. So long story short is he had just had a deal in Mexico expire, a 3-year contract with a big director in Mexico, and they just couldn't get the financing together for this thing.
Wow.
And the option expired. And he said to me, he's like, I was kind of waiting for this phone call. I just didn't know who was going to make it. And I said, well, here I am. And so we ended up making a deal. It was a little bit different than normal deals because I didn't want to tie it up for 3 years for basically no money, and him not being able. So I agreed to do almost like a step deal, that I had to perform certain things. And if things were performed, like get an agent and then get it represented and, get a writer attached and da-da-da-da, then it would automatically renew. And so Jose had mentioned to me that one of the movies that he really likes is McFarlane. And it would be great if we can get the writer for McFarlane. Just so happens that Benito's really good friends with Bettina, who's the writer. So we said, well, we'll work on it. And so we ended up calling Bettina, and she was swamped with a bunch of work, but she agreed to meet with us. And so we brought the book, met at Hugo's over here in Riverside and Coldwater. And pitched her the story. And she's like, I'm in. This is a great story. And for me, it's basically the Rocky of astronaut stories. A guy that just never gives up. For 11 years, he applied and was rejected. So from the time he was 30 until he was 41, he was rejected. And in the meantime, he's working as an engineer at the Lawrence Livermore Lab. He's having kids and not telling his wife that he's doing this until like year 6.
Yeah.
And she only finds out because she finds the rejection letters. So he walks in and she's pissed. And she's like, what are these? And he's like, there's nothing. And she's like, what do you mean nothing? Jose, what is this? And he goes, well, I just thought I'd take a shot. She goes, shot? This is 6 shots for 6 years. Come on, man. Don't you think if you're planning on going to space that your wife should know? Yeah. And so she ends up helping him kind of go, okay, well, you've been rejected this many times. And his father gave him this plan that really changed the trajectory of their life. It's amazing how your life changes by little moments. And it just makes a huge difference years later. But she's like, what do they have that you don't have? He goes, well, they are all scuba diving instructors. They're all pilots. They're all fit. They all speak different languages. And so he started doing each one of those. And every year he'd get rejected until the 11th time. And she's like, no, you're not mailing us in. You're taking it to Houston. So he jumps on a plane and goes to Houston. And the guy's like, José Hernández is here. And Houston's like, what? He's here? The guy that's been doing it for 11 years? I'm like, he's here?
Yeah.
And so he gives like this great speech, and he ends up getting in, and without giving the story away. And then, eventually he ends up going to space.
Wow.
Right.
But
That's incredible.
It's, the difference between him and his cousin is, he has a father and a family that's supporting him. His cousin's kind of supporting the family himself because his dad's not there and his mom's sick. And their lives go like this.
Yeah.
Mm.
Do we want to talk about how he grew up, or do you want to save that for the movie?
Well, in the movie it says he's the first Mexican-American farm worker immigrant to go to space, because he's not the first Latino to be in space.
Right.
But you don't start anywhere lower than where he started,
Living
picking in the
tents,
migrant
workers.
working in the fields, and telling his dad at 7 years old, I want to be an astronaut. And his dad, more importantly, not laughing and saying, okay, you want to do that, mijo? This is what you need to do. You need to first figure out what's your goal, how far you are from that goal, and he gave him this recipe that he still uses today.
It's just fucking incredible, man. It just breaks my heart that so many parents have laughed at their kids. And
because the most discounted. Most people go, yeah, okay. Even his wife, they were talking when they were dating, and she was like, so what's your dream? He goes, be an astronaut. She laughs, and she goes, oh, you're serious? I'm sorry. I thought you were joking. Well, then when she finds it, he goes, well, I mentioned it. She goes, you mentioned it. You mentioned it 10 years ago, and I thought you were joking.
Right. Yeah.
Not serious.
But to think a man who was living in a friggin' tent with his children said to his son, yes, you can do this.
Yes.
Especially when he was that young.
Yes.
I don't want to call color barrier or whatever it was at that time. No Mexican American astronauts, I'm guessing, when he was 7.
There was nothing in front to see that it was possible.
And we've heard so many stories about parents telling kids, you can't do that.
Right.
You're black, you're Mexican.
Right. Don't waste your time. It's too hard.
And the dad gave him a fucking, wow. It just...
I was lucky because my stepfather, actually, he was in the horse racing business and had his own TV show in Northern California. And he had to put it all together. He had to sell the sponsorship. He had to do everything. So he always encouraged me, just keep doing what you're doing. Right. Don't quit. Yeah. It's going to be hard, but don't quit. Just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. And I just, I never had a plan B. It was always, this is what I wanted to do with my life.
Yeah. It's funny how the wisdom out of some of these folks, my father's father is from Ireland, and he worked 53 years on the railroad. My dad went to New York to become an actor. My dad worked regularly, supported himself as an actor. Then he was going to come out to Hollywood. And his father told him, again, he was a yardman for the Boston Maine Railroad for 53 years. Wow. And he said, Bill, your gift is your voice. You should stay in New York, because he started radio. You should stay in New York and work on that. My dad was a tall, good-looking man, black hair, blue-eyed Irishman. And he went to Hollywood. And the guys that stayed behind became millionaires. Wow. And it's funny because a lot of these guys, like Paul Frees, the voice of the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland, these guys were like 5'2". Right. And they
had these big booming voices.
Yeah, so they weren't Hollywood types.
Right.
But they stayed, there was several of them that stayed and became millionaires. And this man, immigrant working in a railroad yard, was like, well, I think this is what you should do. Isn't it funny that some of these parents that they just have wisdom for it. The good ones have wisdom from their children. My dad did all right. My dad just wanted to get a TV show so he could play golf. Right. That was his goal in life.
Play golf?
So, yeah. So make enough money to play golf. Anyway. But
I've always said in this movie that if it wasn't for Jose's father, his whole family would be, because his dad left home at 15 years old. Could you imagine being 15 years old, sneaking across the border, coming all the way up, not knowing a soul, having about $200 in your pocket, and having a name written on a piece of paper that you don't know if it's even real or not, and you go all the way up to Stockton to find this person and ask for a job. And then slowly, as he got older, his wife and then they started having kids, and it started, and again, they were following the fields. They were following the fruit.
Right.
And so at some point, one of the teachers, Jose's teacher, intervenes and says, you have to stop moving. And he's like, we can't. How am I supposed to support my family? And she said, well, education's important. And he's like, it is. It's important to us. They don't work on the Saturday.
Right.
They don't work in the Saturday. Everybody else's kids work on Saturday. My kids don't work on Saturday. They're in the kitchen doing their homework. So I understand it's important. And she's like, but you don't understand. If you keep moving them, it's going to hurt them. And so eventually she gets through to the dad. You know, and the dad makes that decision, okay, it's going to be hard, but how am I going to put food on the table for, at that time, 7 people?
So
5 kids and the 2 of them.
Okay, so 2 or 3 of the sisters are engineers, or they're all engineers?
There's 4 kids and 2 adults, 6. I think Jose is an engineer. The sister's not an engineer, but she's in the math department at UOP, and then I think his 2 brothers are engineers.
Yeah, crazy.
Did the dad?
And the dad has a 3rd grade education.
Wow. Did the dad get to see Jose's
Yeah, he's
success?
still alive.
Oh, okay.
Still alive.
Awesome.
As a matter of fact,
Wow.
did you see the Morello commercial that they did with Jose? You know the Morello commercials, and they usually highlight like a Latino doing something incredible, an MMA fighter or something. And his is from the fields to the stars. And it's Jose and his dad together in the commercial together.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
What part of the process are you in right now as far as?
We're about to start shooting
About to
next
start
Monday.
Which is
Awesome.
why he's
I'm
wearing
on
a mask.
That's why I'm
Oh,
wearing a
yeah.
mask now, because I don't want to test positive
Yeah.
when I land. So.
Congrats. That's incredible.
Yeah, and what happened was we got Bettina, and she put together a treatment. I didn't have the heart to ask her to write a script. I mean, it's just too much, you know, and for free. So she wrote a 15-page treatment, and then our agent, because I was known for television, and I'm smart enough to realize that no one's going to write me a check for $30 million or whatever it cost to make the movie with a television background. So we had to find some producers to partner up with, and we interviewed about 6 different places, and we went with Select Films with a guy named Mark Ciardi, who's done, and Campbell Enos, who's done a great job, and they came in and recommended that we cut it from 15 pages to like 10. And then we went to the studios, and all of us went. Jose, Bettina, me, Benito, Mark, Campbell, all of us paraded different studios, and we got offers from 3 of them, and Netflix bought it. So Netflix is the one that paid to have Bettina write the script. So she wrote the script. But unfortunately, Bettina's passed since, and she didn't get to see that it's actually going to get made.
Dang.
Which is really a bummer. But to make the story longer, something was missing from the script, and it was the flavor. It was our background. It was my background. It was the music and the foods that I grew up with, my grandmother, and the cooking, and just the smells. And it was structurally okay, but it didn't have flavor. And so we brought in a Latino writer to come in and give it flavor. And then once that was done, we ended up going to directors, and we found this great director, Alejandra, and she polished it more. And then we went to actors and got Michael Peña, because Jose's been, from day one, said, Michael Peña would be great playing me. And so we're like, yeah, okay. Well, eventually Michael Peña signed on.
Wow.
So it was all ready to go.
Man.
This was back in October. November, we're all getting set. We're getting ready. We're going to submit a budget. And we get a phone call from Netflix that they're letting it go. That there's changes happening in Netflix. And And we were all like, oh my God, how do you get this far? And Mark's like, I've never seen this, where a movie gets this far along. I mean, literally, all we need is a check now. We could start working.
Yeah.
And so we were like really bummed out. And luckily for us, a week before that phone call, Alejandra, who's been doing really well and making a name for herself here in Hollywood. She's from Mexico City. She had a meal or lunch or a meeting with someone from Amazon and telling her about this movie. And she's like, wow, that's something we would do. And she's like, well, I think they brought it to you and you guys passed or something. And so, well, when it went into turnaround, they immediately picked it up. And it's as if it never stopped. And now we started casting, and we literally we had a table read 2 days ago, which is killing me because I want to be down there now, but I'm waiting for Benito to finish his show so we can both go down together. And so I was watching it on Zoom, and everybody's in there, and it's like, oh man, this is. I mean, it's just, it's like my vision of what I read coming to life.
Right.
Like this is what I saw when that day in Danville when I read the book, and I was like, this is it. It's coming alive, man. This is the first time I've ever had that. I've had where I've designed shows, but reality shows are different than what I think in my head, you know, with the script, with the story.
That's incredible.
So, but I have a bunch of other stories that we're working on and stuff like that. So,
and we were talking about you and Benita have now raising a child.
Yes, yeah, it's a family member who is just too young, and so we decided to adopt Thomas, and he has been the light of our lives.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you told me it's the greatest thing that ever happened.
Ever. I mean, being a dad is probably the best thing that's ever happened to me. I mean, I've always been sort of in this business where you're always worried about how to take care of yourself, let alone family members. And as I've gotten older, I've kind of mellowed out a little bit and been like, well, maybe you don't need $1 gazillion to raise a child. You know, maybe you don't need, all the stuff. And so it has been the greatest gift for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Seems like things are coming together for you, Ricky T.
Well, it's, like I said earlier, you never know, even in the midst of chaos and what seems to be a bad situation somehow turns out better than you ever thought, dreamed possible.
Right.
When I lost my job, when I, lost the girl, when I lost the money, all of it, it all seemed to be opportunities of growth.
Right.
Well,
I can't wait to see what happens with you. And thanks a lot for coming out, dude. I really appreciate it. It's been a great day.
Thank you.
Great day.
Yeah, thank you, brother.
Thanks, man.